Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and today we have a video from Devin Halpin in the Tier 6 Japanese carrier, the Ryujo. And unfortunately, graphics are going to look a little weird. There's nothing you can do about it. The carrier replays kind of get this weird like phase lag as you move the mouse around. And hopefully it's not as bad in the recorded video as it is watching, but I really do want to share some carrier games, and the only way to do that is to start recording them, even if there are bugs like this. Now, the other point of this series is a while back I kind of did a first of, people still learning and where they wanted my comments on the game and maybe what they could have done better. And I haven't decided what I'm going to call the series, but this is going to be a second because Devin, admittedly, is very new at carriers and he kind of wanted my opinion on this game and what I thought of it. So, despite not being great at carriers myself, I've seen a lot of great carrier play, so there's going to be a couple things I can comment on. My big issue, personally, when I try to play carriers is there's just a lot to pay attention to, and invariably I wind up forgetting about a squadron who gets completely deleted, and it really hurts you, especially at these lower tiers where, as you can see, it's only got 11 extra torpedo bombers. So you don't have those deep hangars that the high tiers have. So the two he's lost to this York and Atlanta already, really hurting, and there goes the whole squadron. And that would kind of be my first comment is early on in games, if you're playing a carrier, really work on protecting those strike packages. Carriers are amazing late game assets, just like destroyers. Their ability to kind of pop up, strike anywhere on the map, and take out low health ships is where they really start to affect a battle. Now obviously you can get early game strikes in and do some pretty big damage really quickly, but a lot of what's going to go on is ultimately more important at the late game. And I think I may have figured a way around the warping about. I'm just going to have to control the camera myself, which actually seems to be working a little pretty well. So looking around, you can see he lost the first two squadrons. He's down to 3 torpedo bombers. He's still got all these dive bombers, but the enemy carrier, despite having been detected on the map, isn't anywhere. And really, that kind of tells you a lot. He's got his fighter one over here, and I personally would have kept it a little more centered. I think Devin was looking for maybe a strike group going around the outside, but it raced up the middle. And the only reason I'd say I'd keep it more centered is until you kind of know what the carrier's doing. In a situation like this, where he's got one fighter group and a bunch of strike packages, send a bomber off to the flank. Once again, striking things early, maybe not as important. So if you're concerned about a carrier trying to get around, just keep, a squadron out on the flank, but put your fighters in maybe a more neutral position, because when you've only got one set, you can't cover the whole map. And it's what makes playing some of the low-tier Japanese carriers very difficult is the Americans, if they choose to go air superiority, can just dominate you. The reverse becomes true later when the Japanese just get so many different strike groups and even have a ton of fighters that they become hard to play against because there's just a lot for your couple American fighter groups to try to deal with. So Devin's been keeping these bombers kind of close. I think he's doing a decent job spotting, though I can't really speak, but he keeps moving them in close to the York. And obviously it looks like, just from the number of planes that got shot down, that York probably used defensive AA. And you really have to keep your planes away from cruisers, particularly in this case, higher tier cruisers. Carriers are hard to play when you're under tiered, and that's the case in this game. Like going for, say, wherever he is, well, the enemy team doesn't have one, but a Scharnhorst. A Scharnhorst will absolutely demolish Devin's planes. And once again, he's bringing his torp bombers in. He's going for a strike on this thing. And The plus side, the defensive AA was used against his normal bombers, and he's going to get torpedoes in here. It was a good drop, and when I do drops, I try to drop just astern of a ship that's turning away, because you can see how it carried the York into those torpedoes as they kept going forward. You can really maximize the damage. And then he had his bombers following up, ready to drop for fires, because the floods are going to be repaired. So that's a general good strategy in carriers, is, you know, one way or the other. Either get the strike in with the bombers, where you get a couple fires, force the repair, then go for the floods with the torpedoes, or vice versa, but keep those strikes apart. And when I'm sailing American ships, where you've got even fewer groups, say I had the Saipan, where I've got 2 torpedo bombers, I space my 2 torpedo bombers out enough that the person's stuck to deal with a flood. With the York now dead, you can get on to what carriers are really great at, and that is picking on lone battleships. The Congo, tier 5, lower tier, can't do much about that. 2 fires, good chunk of damage, and he puts it out. Sadly, no one's there to relight it, and his torpedo squadrons aren't yet ready, but you can see he's already out. And that's where losing those first 2 squadrons to the Atlanta really is going to hurt him in this game, because he's running himself out of aircraft, and that happens very quickly. Meanwhile, over on the other flank, he does have his fighter group up in the air, and unfortunately it's kind of stuck chasing. And that can be a tricky thing about a single fighter group, is you can never really pincer the enemy team. He's gonna engage with the squadron. He used the alt attack. Unfortunately, didn't hit too well, but there is a Bagioni right underneath, and that's another trick to carriers. Engage enemy planes within support of your own. Don't engage enemy planes in support of the enemy. And you see it so often. I've abused it. If I'm in a carrier in a division, I make sure my division mate has AA, because I'll intentionally just bait aircraft over. And if you're playing a carrier, know where your planes with good AA are, or your ships with good AA, so that you can jump in, you can provide that support. Now, I don't like what Devon did here. He's trying to get drops on this Congo, and he cuts inside, taking him closer to Colorado. Now, he hasn't lost any planes yet, and he gets the drop off, but you really want to be aware, because he could have ended up losing a couple planes there. And once again, you kind of want to drop from the outside of the turn, just because of ship dynamics and how a ship turns and moves forward. You're going to have a better chance of getting a lot of torpedoes in from the outside rather than the inside. It's why, unless my rudder's over already, I universally turn in towards all torpedoes I see, because you just have a better chance of ducking them, and you don't carry yourself through their path for a longer period of time. Now, the Congo was hit, and, well, unfortunately, Devon goes for the Colorado there. I would have kept focusing on the Congo, and the simple reason is he got those torps in. You really want to get those damage controls stacked. That all said, he is doing well. He's up to about 61,000 damage. The Colorado puts the fire out, unfortunately, but it's a good, healthy amount of damage. Just based on the 10 times your tier thing, 60,000 is where you can kind of start calling a game good. Now, I'm not sure why Devon got so far ahead here. I think maybe just because his team was pushing, and there was a lot of his team over here at one point. He felt it was safe, but he's getting himself pretty close to trouble. You can see that 9.6 getting awfully close to detection range, and the last thing you want as a carrier really is to be detected, because despite it might not being the best idea, people are always going to go after a carrier. And it appears Devon has decided the Colorado is the target of priority here. He gets a drop off, but it's too close, and the Colorado manages to, dodge the one that does manage to activate. And once again, he's attacking between a pair of ships. Try to make your attack vector come from a side where you're not flying through another ship's AA. It's just going to keep your planes alive longer. The next squadron is coming in, and the Colorado is stuck in a turn. And this is what I mean. I like to attack from about this angle. Maybe 20-30 degrees abaft the beam. I wouldn't have angled them quite as much, but you can see how many of these are going to hit. And it's because the Colorado's natural path is carrying him forward into those torpedoes. He lands 3 PEDs, gets a flood, exactly what you want, and here's the bomber squadron. Now, you might think it's a little premature, but I think the Colorado, because of the earlier fires, still hasn't managed to put them out, although he's definitely flooding and burning. So that's where you get your damage, and you can see how quickly it adds up. Each tick of the flood and fire is basically 1,000 damage. That Colorado sinking. And obviously at this point you want to get in, and like I was saying, it was going to hurt him losing those early squadrons, and it has. He's down to 1 torpedo squadron, and it's just not a situation you want to put yourself in. He's got a set of bombers that are still loaded. He's holding them back, and I would loop those in at the Colorado. You know, at this point, the Colorado's put your fire out, put your flood out, go for the ship, you can get the damage control on. He decides to go for the Congo. You can see adjusting his strike, coming straight in the nose to get a nice long target, gets a fire, 2 hits, some more damage. But going for that Colorado, in my opinion, is a better idea because already the Congo's put the fire out. Now, I think he's kind of just attacking whatever's closest to him, which, you know, it's a valid point because he's kind of alone now. The Pensacola is getting behind island, and this Congo is going to be in attack soon. And once again, coming from the side where 2 ships have shots at him, and I just don't like seeing that. The drop was just too close. The torpedoes activating moments after, and the Congo continues to close. The other reason dropping from this side may have been wise is if you could have gotten the Congo to turn out and behind this island, you buy yourself more time because Devon's now detected and he's all alone. He's getting the rudder over to angle in, and that's going to be important. But he's in a world of hurt here. Things are not going well for his team. A huge chunk of the team tried to push into the enemy cap and all just kind of progressively died. You can see all the dead ships as they moved in. Getting rid of this Congo, though, is key. Devon's not surviving this game if the Congo lives. He is burning. He got the earlier fire. A good hit here. 1,500, not the best, but he lights another fire, and that's going to take the Congo out. Now, a Pensacola versus an Emile Bertin, the Pensacola should win it. He's not going to get shot by the Congo because you can see the Congo's guns pointing straight at Devon's ship, who is still backing up. He's up to 116,000, and the Congo gets finished off by the Pensacola. That kind of stinks. You really do wish you got the kill on the ship that you worked down. And you can see people on the team complaining that Devon didn't help, and that's the hard thing when you only have 1 fighter squadron. You can't do a whole lot to protect. You go over to one side of the map to try to help someone out. The strike group comes the other way. So with the Emile turned out, Pensacola on pursuit, the game really shifts to getting rid of some of these battleships. Now, I don't know the state of the enemy carrier. Devon managed to kill 8 of the ships. Beyond that, it's hard to say. The Bugioni definitely got a ton of kills, and the Independence is now spotted. Those 2 fires and that strike, really big, helping the Pensacola off. Pensacola is going to finish this Emile off, and that's going to end the threat on their cap when he eventually shoots his guns. If he ever shoots the guns. Okay, a secondary finishes him off. So with that dead, you can see Devon has a strike group going for the Independents, and I wouldn't go for the carrier. I mean, send your fighter group to just kind of loiter and prevent that enemy carrier from getting anything off. But I would really be going for this Colorado or the Koenig who just died, because they're the real threat to one of your remaining ships. The Independence doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot, other than getting the occasional strikeout. So trying to get rid of him, not the most important factor of this game. And the torp drop, a little further away than it needed to be. One of them is, well, looked like it connected. I guess it made it underneath. And the Independence ducks that. The Scharnhorst gets finished off. Fortunately, his Peds took out the Colorado. And that puts this game into an awkward position, because the only remaining enemy ship is in Atlanta. And there is nothing that Devon can do about an Atlanta. The second he tries to go close, even without defensive AA, that Atlanta's just going to chew his planes up. So now the Independence really is the only target to go after. And having watched for a bit, I think the Independence ran himself out of planes. When he was doing his strikes, he was 1-1-1, and it seemed he always had his fighters with his strike group. And whether he was doing that because he was worried that Devon would attack them, or because he just wanted extra aircraft there to kind of absorb some of the AA, who knows, but not having planes late game cripples carriers. And I think that's the situation this Independence has run into. Devon hurt himself a bit. These drops of 2 torpedoes, definitely not what you want to have late game. And that's why I said really early, like, protecting what you have in your strike packages at these lower tiers is really critical. And I know I'm horrible for it. I think I can get a sneaky strike in right at the start of a game, and I wind up losing entire strike packages, where really I should just be a little more cautious, wait for a ship to really end up on its own, go punish them, move on to the next. But with another bomber strike and another fire, this Independence is going to burn for a bit. And despite some of the flack Devon is getting in chat, he did manage so far 137,000 damage, just picked up Witherer and High Caliber. He managed to do a lot this game, despite not having the kills. The Congo really should have been a kill. The York could have been a kill. But there were some mistakes in choices of where some drops come from. And what I saw was a number of drops where you have an open flank that you can drop from, where you're only approaching against one set of AA, and he was choosing to come from the side where 2 ships are going to get strikes on him. With that torpedo, he picks up his first kill, finishes off Arsonist, and now there's just the Atlanta. And Devon pulled up, which, bit of a curious choice, because, well, here's a lonely Atlanta, and those machine guns can do some real damage. Devon gets his rudder over and is trying to duck, and at this point, don't launch planes. Don't try to drop on the Atlanta, because you're just going to lose those strikes, and you really want to have them for that moment. If, say, this Pensacola goes down and the Atlanta winds up on low health, I'd say you want to have those planes for that situation. You can see that bomber group absolutely getting decimated trying to go for the drop, and because of defensive AA, doesn't manage to hit one, loses the whole strike package. And that's just what Atlantas are going to do. If you're in a tier 7 carrier, you have a chance there. But really, this game's going to come down to just staying alive. They've got a huge point lead here. Because the Scharnhorst spent so much time in the enemy cap, they just weren't building points. So even if the Pensacola goes down, you're still in this game. And the Pensacola goes down. So now Devon just has to stay alive for 10 seconds, and he wins this. And there's nothing the Atlanta can do. The Atlanta really should have pushed up sooner, and that would have made the difference.
And overall, the result is good. 316,000 credits, 4,200 experience, Witherer, Arsonist, High Caliber, 147,000 damage. Got a lot of torps and strikes in. 1 kill, probably could have had 2 or 3, and helped the team win. There were definitely some mistakes made, mainly dropping, I think, in my opinion, from the wrong side of the ship where you have multiple sets of AA firing at your planes. I always try to attack from that outside, the soft side, where you're not going to get shot at for as long. But beyond that, there's not much I can personally say because I'm not an expert at carriers. So if some of you are, the whole point of this series is for me to improve, for whoever's video I'm featuring to improve, and ultimately just everyone to get better, see mistakes, learn from them. So if you have advice or tips for Devin, comment about it. If you think I'm wrong on some of the things I said, comment. That's what I want, because that's the only way we learn. And looking at the damage, well, it was well played. The experience screen ticked by quicker, but Devin did top the team. And a lot of times people think the carrier's not doing anything because it's not directly protecting them. And you see that a lot, but a carrier can be incredibly busy shooting down strike packages, getting damage in, and just because someone else happens to be on the other side of the map alone and doesn't see the actual result of that, they think the carrier's absolutely shit. And CVs take a lot of flack in this game. It's not an easy class to play, because if it was, more people would do it, and a lot just don't. And end of the day, 285,000 credits, 4,200 experience, 5,000, and you can see the captain still being trained, and carriers is somewhere where having a high-skilled captain massively makes a difference. Having those extra fighters and bombers in your squadron, having some of those other skills that really amplify the quality of your planes, really crucial to a carrier, and really do make a difference. I know I hate coming up against 19-point captains when I'm playing mine, and you can see it, the way their planes react, and just the quality of the player. I'm kind of hopeless against them. And you've got to play against people like that to get better. See how you're doing, what you're doing wrong, how you're getting caught. And the big way I always get caught is I always seem to be in the AA bubble of something when I engage an enemy squadron. So despite maybe having a stronger attack force, I lose more planes. And avoiding mistakes like that is really how you get better at carriers. Anyways, thank you for sending this in, Devin. I appreciate, games where someone goes, I'm still learning. What do you think? Because I want to do these. I want to be able to, improve and just offer my own comments. And they're not always going to be right. I'm not trying to unilaterally be like, this is how you do it. It's just how I do it. But everyone's playstyle is a little different. Anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing or giving it a thumbs up. And as always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you later.